the Vietnam War was the most the most free and widely reported war in American history. So we allowed journalists to do basically whatever they wanted to in Vietnam, to go report on, film, talk to whoever they wanted to. After, another lesson learned after Vietnam was, I don't know if we do that anymore, and we don't do that anymore. So
Yeah.
during the Iraq War and Afghanistan, you had these things called embedded reporters. So you get permission, you go here, this is where you're at, this is what you do, this is who you talk to, and that's it. If you go back and you look at war footage of Vietnam, man, I mean, these people were out there they were out there, and they were talking about. Now, there's a problem with that. So it's great in some ways. It's like, okay, be free, be democratic, you want information. So let's set aside what I think that is morally correct and right. Set that aside for a moment, though. The North Vietnamese communist authorities had no such qualms about about freedom of information or accurate reporting or anything. So they kept a very tightly controlled. A lot of one of the things that most people will think about the Vietnam War is war crimes committed by American troops, right? Like if I say Vietnam War, you're like, oh, you may hear My Lai massacre. Some of these things you'll maybe have heard of, like, oh, we did terrible things there, right? Yes, people did do terrible things. In every war, that's true. There were war crimes, there were atrocities. The thing is, people don't understand this. A lot of war crimes and atrocities occurred on the part of the North Vietnamese communists also. They didn't film them and put them on NBC. And they didn't write up in newspapers in Hanoi, oh, here's what we did, here and there. Like, they would go into villages in South Vietnam and ask for the tribal leader and say, look, are you going to be a communist or not? And if they're like, oh, we're not a communist, they would bury them alive, and then, okay, well, who's the next leader? Do you want to be a communist or not? Well, okay, yeah, I think I'm going to be a communist. They tortured, I don't even want to go into all the specifics of the atrocities that I've read about.
You probably should, because I don't know them. And
how about
I would
this?
like to know.
Just imagine any type of horror you can imagine, and then just assume it happened. That's what you can do in a war.
No. See, here's the problem: is that, again, my soft Western brain, I can't even imagine the horrors that people have invented for war. I mean, every time I learn about battles in history, Romans or the Ottomans or whatever, I'm always struck by how brutal and violent and vicious and creatively cruel people can be. So, I mean, it is actually not that easy for a person to just think up. And I think that's where we mistake. Because, I mean, you have a lot of people now that are like full-on clowns. Oh, I want revolution. Oh, defund the police. People have no idea what other people are capable of. It's a thing, because we live in such a sheltered world, in such a sheltered society where, again, war is on the outskirts and it's something that we do to other people because we're bad. And if we just stopped being bad, all these bad things would stop. And it's a failure of creativity is really what it is. And it's a good thing. It's great that we can be so comfortable that we don't have to creatively come up with ways to torture other human beings like we've always historically done as human beings. But to just leave it up to people's imaginations, I think that's what the problem is. I think people don't even have the capacity anymore in a society that is just, war is not real to us. For my generation, it's just not even something people think of. We don't even think about it. We hear it. Yeah, we hear, oh, someone's blowing up this country or these people are fighting. But I think there's a weird distance between us and those people over there still struggling because of our fault or whatever. And it's just, there's always this idea that it's these imperial powers that are doing things wrong. As if any other power got the chance to have the upper hand, they wouldn't take it. I think that's the big mistake that people make in trying to understand world history and, why the crimes against humanity occur throughout human history, it's not that any one side is uniquely evil. It's just that they won. And every side, for the most part, unless you're a Quaker, is trying to win. And so I think, please do enlighten us about the horrors that happen that don't get reported on, that we don't hear about. It's an interesting thing. I mean, we hear about what we do. That's what we learn about. And that's good. We should. People should know what their own country has done, but not to the extent that you become so foolish as to believe your country is uniquely evil and uniquely predisposed.
It's not about, to some degree, it's not about the country. To some degree, it's not about the nation. I mean, you can certainly make a case. I mean, well, that's not entirely true. I mean, certainly you would say, some countries have more morally virtuous rules of engagement or, plans of how you're going to treat civilian populations. Like, let's not be completely morally relativistic here. Like, there is a difference between, there's a difference between armies and the way they do things. But here's where there's not a difference. There's not a difference in the capacity for the individual to commit atrocity. So that happens on both sides. So I'm not going to sit here for 20 minutes and talk about war atrocities. Here I'll give you 2 examples, okay? Gave you the example already of what the NVA would do. Again, NVA is a North Vietnam army. People need to understand this briefly. We're getting a lot into the history instead of talking about John Rambo. John Rambo is really getting short shrift. He's not getting talked about very much here. All right, but I'm going to try to tie this into this.
This is what he would want.
So, perhaps. So, I already told you. Okay, so the North Vietnam Army, the NVA, that's one thing. And there's the Viet Cong, which is the communist insurgent guerrilla movement of South Vietnam. So those are the people that are in South Vietnam, which is the democratic Vietnam, but who are for the communists, all right? So my example already I told you about is that, Viet Cong NVA would basically torture villagers in South Vietnam to make them become communists. And they would do this in a variety of different ways, one of which was they would apparently bury people alive in front of the village. See, that's the thing. You make an example of that person, right? So they bring all the villagers there. They talk to the village elders and they say, okay. And then they do what they do. Again, what I'm trying to say is that, like, so that's that side. Now, here's another story from one of the books I was reading about on the American side. Actually, we'll put on the Australians. The Australians actually Australia and New Zealand sent troops into Vietnam also, but obviously a smaller contingent. So this book, A Rumor
put it
of...
on the Australians.
I mean, there's plenty of American atrocities you can read about. The most famous of which is the My Lai massacre. But I wanted to do a more...
I don't know about the My Lai massacre.
So I want to do a more... This very, very... I don't know how to explain it.
Well, that's a problem.
I want to get away from the politics and understand the individual. So this guy, Philip Caputo, who wrote A Rumor of War, I think it was in this. It could have been in the other book I was reading. But anyway, some American soldier runs into a couple Australian soldiers fairly early on in the war, and they notice that they have a necklace. And it looks closely at what the necklace is, and it's human ears.
Oh, no.
And they said, yeah, well, we take trophies. So when we go out and we kill the communists, we'll cut their ears off and make a necklace out of it. So, and by the way, making necklaces out of human ears, that's
ancient.
That's not
ancient.
Yeah, it's not as rare as you'd like to believe.
No, on the contrary, it's probably more common. What's rare is for an industrialized, quote unquote, civilized nation to have its soldiers doing that. But again, that's what's so important, to not view war and battle and the darkness of human beings as something unique to any one nationality or one race or one culture or even one ideology. You get to a certain place where any human being is capable of reverting back to what we've always done, which is making trophies out of people's body parts. I mean, I believe this is probably still done in certain certain tribal nations, because that's a really old version of warfare. And I mean, the way I see it is, when you look at these things, people get so wrapped up in looking at the particular group. Oh, the Australians are this uniquely corrupt colonialist power subjugating the oppressed, or whatever, in whatever other group that they're winning against at the moment, as if that group wouldn't take just as much every opportunity to make trophies out of their ears. That's human beings. That's human nature. The real point is, how do we get to a place where we're not trying to put the blame on one person or one group or one culture or another, but trying to understand that if you bring about any certain circumstance, you will bring about the chance for any person to revert into those modes of behavior where people just become truly like monsters.
Correct. It's not about, like you said, I'm sure this still happens with tribal warfare and stuff. What I'm trying to get at is that it can happen to anyone. You can take the citizen who is the most upright, morally virtuous person who lives in Los Angeles, New York City, wherever, Oklahoma City, doesn't matter. Somewhere in America, who's had a perfectly fine childhood, who is by all, in every measure, a well-adjusted, non-violent, decent human being. And you can take that person and you can subject them to being inside of a jungle, not having taken a shower for a month, having leeches drinking their blood from their legs, being constantly... See, here's the thing about warfare, and this we'll tie it back to Rambo. The warfare that existed in Vietnam wasn't like, okay, guys, line up here, and now we're going to go attack this place, and those guys in those uniforms with their insignia displayed exactly correctly will then shoot at you, and may the best man win. That's not what happened. So what you did is you went out and you walked around, and 99% of the time, nothing happened. All you were is extremely nervous and extremely afraid you were going to get killed, but nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, 1% of the time, everything blows up. A landmine explodes, a sniper shoots you in somewhere, in, these constant, this sudden violence, and then it's gone again. Because what would happen oftentimes on patrol in South Vietnam is, the communist guerrillas understood they weren't going to win a face-to-face fight. You don't do that. It's asymmetrical warfare. So if you don't have the weapons, you don't have the money, and you don't have the stuff, you have to fight a different way. And they did. And so it was about, and these are generalizations. There were actually some big set piece battles in Vietnam. But I'm trying to say, take yourself, forget about a person. Anyone listening to this needs to think about this for a second. You really need to think about this for a second. Take yourself, put yourself in a foreign country where you can't speak the language, you don't know anything about the history, the culture, the people. You are in 105-degree humid weather in a jungle, and you're not there for 4 hours on a tourist trip. You sleep in dirt. You sleep in a foxhole, and you're carrying 60-plus pounds of stuff on your back, and you walk for miles. And nothing much happens except you get disease, and you are occasionally shot at by people you can't see. And you see your friends... legs blown off one day. A bullet comes real close to you, but you don't get hit that time. You're eaten by bugs and mosquitoes, and you don't really know why you're there, and you didn't sign up for it. Your government told you had to go. Take that person, yourself, and don't tell anybody, but ask yourself the question. After 6 months of that, do you think you'd be the same person? Do you think you'd be making necklaces out of human ear? Look, here's the reality. There's a bunch of you, people that are listening right now. Not the majority. I don't believe the majority. I really don't. But there's a significant amount of people listening right now. Well-adjusted, great, just nice viewers watching this on YouTube in their air-conditioned house who would be fucking selling human ear necklaces on Etsy when they got back. because they would have collected so many. And that's the point I'm trying to get at, is that it's the conditions that can revert human beings back to something that they have no conception of. And it's important that everyone understands that that is within them, given the right circumstances. That's just a good lesson to know, I think, that you can become that. You can become human necklace maker, human ear necklace maker.
I think that's in a way what is such a problem with our culture as it is right now, is that we've gotten into this Nietzschean stage where it's the victim, the bottom, the underdog, everything that is, broken and sad and oppressed and downtrodden. That's what's good. And so the idea of being the human necklace maker is so offensive, and rightly, it should be, it should be. But it's not that it's not within you. It's not that this thing that we're so moral now that we're just different. We're a different species. We are the same species. It's the situation. And people take the situation for granted. People really are so delusional as to, it's kind of this thing of benefiting from the achievements of your society and kind of believing that you did it. I'm not sick all the time because of me. Not because the society I live in has made my water safe and has made my food safe. It's just me. I'm just healthy. You want to talk about privilege. It is such a privilege to believe that you're truly so righteously moral that you're incapable of doing anything not compassionate or even evil as people in the past have done. Of course, those people were even more religious and more concerned with morals in certain regards than we are now. I mean, you go back a few generations, people look at our everyday and they're just like, these people are heathens. But nevertheless, they easily became human ear necklace makers. And so, I don't know. I think, especially when you had 2020, where it was like the peak of people believing that there's such a thing as righteous violence, these riots where people are going through neighborhoods and attacking innocent people, yelling at people that are sitting at restaurant tables. I mean, are you sure? You're sure that you're so incapable of any type of violence, of any type of cruelty to another person that you deemed a threat or an enemy? I mean, that's the problem with where we are in society, is that we're victims of our own peace, essentially. Because peace is rare. Peace is almost non-existent in nature. In a way, nature is this, you're in the forest. You're constantly at risk. We have part of our brain is just a threat-seeking device, and we're really good at that. That's what humans are probably better at than most of the other things they do. So seeking out and identifying what threatens them. But here we are in a society where not much threatens us. You're not in the forest covered in leeches waiting for, an unseen enemy to attack. You don't have to worry about predators roaming the streets. You don't have to worry about your food causing illness and killing you and your entire family. You don't even really have to worry about natural disasters or anything like that. We're pretty well off in our society. I mean, so in a way, we still have that highly designed threat-seeking mechanism, and so we use it.